Well, hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this next installment of Programming for the Web. Today we're going to look at upgrading Yii2 from Bootstrap 3, which is a default for Yii2, to Bootstrap 4. Now this is a step-by-step tutorial video, so it will be a little bit longer than normal. First of all, we need to have the system prepared and ready. So we need to ensure that Composer is up to date because we'll be using Composer. We need to install Yii2 Basic, the latest version, because that actually has some upgrades for Bootstrap 4. We need to create a database and do the basic configuration of Yii2 Basic. Now we then need to create some dummy data. Now the reason for this is so that we can create a CRUD, a model and a CRUD, so that we can look at some of the CSS and the differences between Bootstrap 3 and Bootstrap 4. And then finally we need to update the menu, and there is actually one other thing that we need to do, is if you are just updating an older version of Yii2, not the latest version, if you're just updating, then you will actually need to write a component, and we'll do that right at the very end. The upgrade itself. So we need to uninstall Bootstrap 3, we need to install Bootstrap 4, we need to replace all the instances of Yii Bootstrap with Yii Bootstrap 4. Now notice that there are backslashes at the end. That's important if you're doing a search and replace. We need to change the views layouts main PHP. There's quite a lot of changes needed in there because the menu doesn't work and a couple of other things. We need to add Bootstrap icons to app assets. Now you can use Font Awesome if you wish, but I notice that Font Awesome has been going over to more paid for and more paid for, so at some point I think the free versions might disappear, whereas the Bootstrap icons are free, and we will actually be using them if you're using the old version of Yii2, not the latest version. We'll be using those when we create the component. If necessary, we will need to create this component, the grid action column PHP, which we'll do right at the very end, but it's only if you're using an older version of Yii2, not the very latest versions. And then finally we need to change the views country form, underscore form, so that it displays the grid and the pagination correctly. Right, and we also need to do the index as well. There are some problems. Right, Bootstrap 4 uses different CSS to Bootstrap 3. So if you are using a theme that uses Bootstrap 3, you will need to update that theme, whether that's an update or whether you have to do it manually. Okay, so, and you'll need to go through parts of Yii to do various updates if necessary. Okay, any CRUD created by G will need to be edited because it uses Bootstrap 3. Okay, the default CSS, which is site.css, that comes with Yii2, will need editing, and some of it actually no longer works. If you are using a template in active form in the field config, then some of that will need editing as well. There is a problem with that, and in fact it's probably easier just not to use the template and use pure CSS instead. Then finally there are some links. Okay, so Get Bootstrap, Getting Started, the introduction. So if you need to know how to use Bootstrap 4 and the differences there, then Yii framework, Yii itself, actually has some documentation as to how to migrate from Bootstrap 3 to Bootstrap 4. And then finally you'll find all the code on my GitHub page at JQL Yii2-Bootstrap 4. Okay, so if you have a problem you can actually look at the code there. There are also full step-by-step instructions. Okay, let's get started. So the first thing we need to do is we need to make sure that Composer, is up to date. So I'm in my htdocs folder. Mine just happens to be called www, but yours is probably called htdocs if you're using XAMPP. It's called htdocs, and mine just happens to be on Dropbox, whereas yours will be in optlamp. Okay, so make sure you're in the root of the htdocs. Now I'm going to use terminal here, and basically you need to download Composer if you don't have it. And to download Composer, you go to the Get Composer download page and follow the instructions there. Okay, now if you have Composer, you need to make sure it's updated, so use Composer self-update and press enter, and make sure that you are on the latest version, which is version 2.0.14 as I speak, which is the end of May 2021. Okay, you do need to be on version 2, not version 1. Okay, once you've got that done, you now need to create your folder, okay, and your Yii2 project. So again, we're in terminal here, and what we will do, sorry, I've got another screen open on the other side. What we will do is we will now bring down a Yii2 basic setting. Now, to do that, you can actually go into Yii2 and into the guide, and it will actually show you what to do. But again, there's a link on GitHub JQL, and so basically just copy and paste that link. Okay, it's in the README, so all you need to do is scroll down. It's in the README. Copy and paste that link, and it's there. So here we are, Composer. We're creating a Yii2 project. Okay, we're using the Yeesoft basic application, and I'm going to put it into a folder called Bootstrap 4. Okay, so we'll go ahead and do that. Okay, now that's been done, so we've now got Bootstrap 4, and we've got all the Yii information in here. If we actually go to the browser now, open a new window and type in localhost, and okay, you can see that the Yii2 application is working completely. It's all there, it's all up and running. Okay, it's all working. Okay, and all I've done at this point is just downloaded it. Okay, we need to configure it, and we need to do other things. So the first thing we need to do is we need to create a database. So php myadmin, and say use XAMPP or LAMP. It doesn't matter which one. It's just makes your life a lot easier. Okay, so we'll log in. We need to create a new database, and I'm going to call it Bootstrap 4 just because it's easier. Okay, now you have a choice of collations that you can use. Now if you want to use MB4, this is because you will have a lot of extended characters in your alphabet. I'm actually going to use just the Unicode, the UTF-8 Unicode CI for this rather than the MB4. No real reason, it's just that I don't have a lot of extended characters in my alphabet. Okay, so we'll create that database, and you can see it's here and it's been created. There's no table. Now if you actually go to the GitHub website, GitHub JQL Bootstrap 4, and you will find that there's an SQL file which you can use to create the database if you wish, create the table. Okay, so you can actually create it if you wish. We're going to use a migration simply because I prefer to have everything within the Yii project. That way it's easier. Now you can see that we have a complete. So now we need to start our IDE. I'm using NetBeans. This is NetBeans 12.3. You can use whichever IDE you wish. There's no problem, Atom. It's just that I use Apache, and the NetBeans IDE, so it's the one I know best. Okay, so we need to create a new project. So click on New Project, PHP, and it'll be a PHP application with existing sources because we downloaded Yii2. So we'll click on Next. Okay, we need to find the sources folder, which is Bootstrap 4, and I'll change that to PHP 8 and click on Next. We have to tell it where the index file is, otherwise we have an error. So we'll come down to Web and index PHP and click on Select File and click on Finish, and it will now create the project. Okay, so we've put Bootstrap 4 folder into Apache NetBeans. There is one message which will probably be about Smarty templates, so I'll just click on that, Smarty auto detection, and I shall click on that to allow it to happen, and that should be done. If we come to source files, now the first thing we need to do is we need to change the configuration. So we need a database file, so come into db.php and change that to the name of your database, which, if you remember, we called it Bootstrap 4, and put in your details. Okay, and save that. Alright, once that's saved, and close. If you have, and the next thing we want to do is we want to come into web PHP, okay, and come down to where it says URL manager, and we want to enable the pretty URLs. It just makes it look much nicer on the website. Okay, and having done that, if we click Run, I'll close that one, so you can see that we've now got the pretty URLs. We don't have the old system, okay, which is much nicer, much nicer. Okay, one of the things I like to do also is to name the application. It just makes it a little easier for me, and so what I do at the top of web, just after base path, is I type in name, name, and I shall name it Yii2 Bootstrap 4 upgrade, and that will now appear on. I don't have autosave set, just in case I actually don't want to autosave something. Yes, it does cause problems. Okay, so that's the configuration now set up, and everything is working. We now need to create the table within the database, because we have the database set up in Yii. So if we come into Terminal, and you need to change to the Bootstrap 4 folder, and we now need to create a migration. Now, if you don't want to do this, you can just download the SQL from my GitHub page. So it's Yii migrate create. Now if you're using Windows, then it's Yii2, but on a Mac and Linux it's Yii. But okay, and then you need to tell it what you're creating. Create what are we gonna, we'll call it country because it's actually got country in country data in it. Create country table. We'll press enter and it asks if you want to do it, just to confirm. So we can see that now in migrations we now have an empty table. Okay, it automatically populates it with a safe up and a safe down. Okay, it's given it the name of country because we were clever enough to actually use the underscore country table so it knows what to call it. Now we need to replace this, and the code is on the website, but I shall take the, I have another screen open here, and we'll just take the information from the other screen. Now I like to do this because that way I've got everything within the project. So, and I keep my projects on Dropbox, so that way I can access it from different machines if necessary. So all I've done is I've created the table. Now this table is in the Yii2 framework Yii2 tutorial on the Yii framework website, so you can actually use that code. So that's where I've got this from. So it has a code, a name, and a population. I've then added a primary key, and to make my life easier, we've got some dummy data to put in it. Okay, the populations will not necessarily be correct. So if we now save that and we come to, we can actually now create the table in the database, and to do that all we need to do is type in Yii migrate. Okay, if you're using Windows, remember it's yii.bat. Okay, and it's actually going to say, do you want to do it? And we do. Make sure there's no errors and everything is good. So let's just check that that's been made, and you can see we now have two tables, one called country and one called migration, which tracks your migrations. If we go into country, you'll see that it's all been populated with about 30 or so items. Okay, we don't actually need PHP myadmin anymore, so that's good. So now we need to create a, if I just refresh that, okay, you can see we've got the name on here. We need to create the G model. So if I enter G and we get, so all I've done is just typed in G. So we need to create the model within Yii. So the table name is country. So now you can choose whichever you want to use in here. I tend to always put these in. Okay, you can generate an active query if you wish. It's not necessary for this. And we'll click on preview, and if we come down you'll see it's in green, so we'll generate it. Okay, so it's now generated the model. So if we come back here, you can see in models we now have a country model. We don't need that anymore. Okay, so it's created the model for us, and there's nothing for us actually to do in here. We don't need to change any of that. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is we need to do the CRUD. So again, if you've used this, you just need to type in the correct, there's information, if you mouse over it tells you what to do. Okay, so I have already got these in, so I'm calling my search class country search and my country controller, and remember you always have to have controller at the end of the name. Leave the view path blank, and I'm going to enable the internationalization. Now, I'm going to enable PJAX. You don't need to do this, but I'm going to do it so that you see what you need to do and what some things need to be changed and some things don't need to be changed. And that's why I'm enabling PJAX. So if we click on Preview, you can see it's going to create a number of files for us. We click on Generate, and it's created the files for us, which is very good. And you will see in controllers we now have a country controller, and it's all there. Everything is in there. Okay, and we have we've seen the model, but it'll have actually created a search model as well, and it's also created in views. It's created the views that we need as well. So if we come back here and instead of CRUD we just type in country, we should have a fully functioning database. And this is all using at the moment Yii 2 with PHP 3. We haven't done any of the updates yet, so you can see it all functions. You've got the pagination, you've got the icons, you can create countries, you've got the breadcrumbs and things like that, so you can alter and you can delete. Okay, so the next thing we need to do really is to add, this is not really necessary, but I'm going to do it. I'm just going to add a link on the index to make it easy to access the country. So I'm just going to copy the label, paste it in, change the name to country, and change the site to country, and we'll save that. If we come back here, you now see we've got a country item. If I click on home and then click on country, you can see it's easy. Right, so that's part one. We'll now move on to part two, which is the next video.